Hey, Changemaker! Welcome to Learning for Good, the only podcast that teaches nonprofit leaders how to leverage training to drive performance, improve capacity, and fuel their mission impact. Do you ever feel like your nonprofit is growing, but your people just aren't keeping up? Or like you're fixing the same problems over and over? Do you wonder how to build confident, capable staff who know how to lead, not just execute? If we haven't met yet, I'm Heather, and I know how hard it can feel to get people to do what's expected of them. Trust me, I have 3 kids. I've tried telling people what to do and how. I've tried the traditional training approaches, and I realized that just doesn't work. And that's when I started researching what does work. Now, I help mission-driven leaders use learning to drive performance, build capacity, and make change that lasts. And I'm sharing it all on this podcast. So block your calendar, turn off your Teams or Slack chat, and let's dive in. It's Learning for Good. In the 2025 Workplace Learning Report, LinkedIn reported that 49% of learning and development pros believed their executive teams were concerned that employees do not have the skills they need. Executives recognize a gap between the skills their employees have and the skills their employees need. This is a good thing. But what do we do about it? Most often we create training. In fact, the Harvard Business Review reported that companies spend $350 billion every single year on training, and that's based on 2024 data. Again, this could be good news for learning and development. But sometimes we spend the time and money creating training, and it doesn't work. It doesn't build the skill. It doesn't close that gap. It doesn't impact the business, and it doesn't further the mission. Why is that? We know how to design learning. We've studied instructional design, either formally or informally. We've got the experience. Why is training not moving the needle? Why do so many trainings fail? That's what I want us to explore today. Let's dive in. It's Learning for Good. Why do so many trainings fail? Training is a good solution in many situations. An organizational change is happening. There's often a training need. You're experiencing a performance challenge. Training can often help. You need to upskill or reskill. We go to training. But sometimes training doesn't work. Was it not the right solution? Or was something wrong with the training? Why did the training fail? I've spent a lot of time thinking about this over the years. Why is one training successful and another one not? And so today I want to share 5 reasons I've found in my work with nonprofits that training fails. First, we're solving the wrong problem. Someone comes to learning and development and they say they need a training. They might even have quote unquote evidence of this training need. They're bringing you proof. And we take it at face value and we work closely with this partner to create an amazing training that solves that particular need. But the problem is that need wasn't accurate, or at least not totally accurate. It was likely a legitimate pain point. After all, they came to you with some evidence or proof, but it might not have been the root cause. And so we create this great solution to the wrong problem. I've seen this happen, and that's why we have an upcoming group coaching session inside the nonprofit L&D Collective. The group coaching session is going to be around the question, is this a training problem? And the session is for everyone at the catalyst tier of the collective, and it'll allow us to discuss and really dialogue as a group about the problem, the root cause, and the right solution so we can figure it out before it's too late, like when the training is already created. Instead, we want to do the needs analysis up front. And so, what I typically do in this case is I want to review key documents about the expectations. I want to see strategic plans, job descriptions, competency models if they exist. I want to see performance goals, the processes that are documented, whatever it is that's documented and relevant to the problem. I also want to talk to the people being impacted. So I might interview them. I might hold focus groups, conduct a survey, right? Anything that allows me to hear about their experience. Because I don't want to create a whole training about, say, how to submit a form, only to find out the reason they aren't submitting the form is because they don't have access to the system. And that's a little bit of a basic example, but you might have evidence that they're not submitting the form, and that's a problem. But really, the solution wasn't training, it was getting them access to the system. And so we don't know that unless we hear directly from the audience and understand their context. And we have to do that to make sure we're solving the right problem. Now, the second reason I hear that so many trainings fail, things that I see this often, is that the scope is just too big. You know what happens? Someone in the organization approaches learning and development and asks you to create a training, and they feel like this is their one opportunity to tell the learner everything they need to know. They want to solve every problem they've ever seen with one training. And the scope just gets bigger and bigger. And what started out as maybe 2 to 3 learning objectives, really tight, clear goals, has now developed into 42 side points. And that's just not how the brain works. But I think we have a hard time sometimes explaining that to the subject matter expert or the stakeholder and pushing back in a way that feels comfortable and feels like you're still in that trusted relationship. Now, why and how to have that conversation is something completely different and probably something for a future episode. But we have to be able to tighten that scope if we want the training to work. The third reason I've seen training fail is that we're not incorporating behavior change principles. Once we get going and we've uncovered needs, we get so focused on the training that we forget that training isn't the goal, change is. We write those learning objectives. We imagine the course. We storyboard. We bring it all to life with pictures and videos and stories and analogies, and it's good. But we've lost focus at some point in the process. We created a great training, but we didn't take into consideration how humans actually change their behavior. We need a prompt. We need to be motivated to make the change. We need to implement this new behavior into our routine, and we need to feel or receive some sort of reward. That's how behavior changes. And we have to think about how we can build this process, this experience into our learning experiences, into our training. What prompt do they need? Does it exist? Do we need to create it? Are they motivated to make this change? If not, how can we bring this to life for them and help them see the value in it? What's the new routine, or how does this new behavior fit into their existing routine? Will they feel an intrinsic reward? And maybe even if so, how can we create an extrinsic reward, right? Something external to them, a supervisor who supports them, congratulates them, some way of recognition as they make this change. Now, I have a whole podcast episode on designing training based on lessons from the behavior change experts, and I'll drop that in the show notes. If you want to learn more about this part of the process, definitely check out that episode. This is so important. I don't want us to miss this. We may have only designed for the routine, the skill, the one piece of the process, but we really needed all of the other parts. And that's why the training failed. The fourth reason I've seen training fail is that we haven't created any wraparound support. This is related to the behavior change process as well. Change is not a one-time event, and training shouldn't be either. We need wraparound support if we want to see that behavior change. So that might mean creating job aids and other resources, helping people managers support their people through change, offering coaches or mentors, or even creating a community of practice. There are lots of ways to offer additional support so that the people who need to change have the support, have the resources, and get the accountability to do so. The fifth reason I've seen training fail is that we aren't actually measuring anything meaningful. And I get it, measuring training is hard, especially in complex organizations, and I know many nonprofits are. But that satisfaction survey alone is not likely going to give you the data that you need. We need data to know if our training works, and if it doesn't, how to adapt it. If we aren't measuring it, we don't know it isn't working, and then we just continue to offer it over and over again with the same mediocre results. And at some point, months or even years later, we realize it didn't work. If we get that data ahead of time, then we can adapt, we can change, we can make sure that training doesn't fail. But if we don't get that data, we're losing time, we're losing money, we're losing resources, and likely that training will fail. So we have to measure things that are meaningful. It's so important to offer training and other solutions to the key audiences, whether it's staff, volunteers, or customers, whatever it is for your organization. And it's also important that those solutions work. Your mission depends on it. If you're creating training for nonprofit, come join us in the Nonprofit L&D Collective. The resources, community, and learning inside the collective is unmatched because it is the only group specifically designed with nonprofits in mind. I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.
Hey friend, was this episode helpful for you? Did you like what you heard? Do you want more content like this? Here are 3 things you can do. Hit subscribe. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Share this episode with a colleague. This means so much to me personally. I read every review, but it also helps me learn what content you like most so I can create more of what you want. All right, turn that Teams or Slack chat back on when you're ready, and I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.